Good morning. It's really exciting to follow Diane because so many of those components she was just talking about in her program are some of the things that we really liked about the diabetes prevention program. So a great overlap. So I'm going to be talking about how we're adopting the National Diabetes Prevention Program to fit a little bit better needs for less of a health focus. So this is a little bit busy. You can look up the data. So right here, whenever you look up, diabetes prevention, you're going to see this first graph here. It's a program that a lifestyle change program 1 year that showed compared to metformin or to a control, reduce the risk of developing diabetes within the next 5 years by half. So you'll see at the year 4, you got placebo, metformin, lifestyle, so really great outcomes. What they don't tell you, and what I kind of learned through investigation of going through intuitive eating training, we had to sign a disclaimer that said it's unethical to use intuitive eating for weight loss purposes because there is no long-term trial past 5 years that shows that people, only 5% of people can keep their weight off. So that kind of opened my eyes. I knew that, this keeping weight off was a problem, but this was information that I'm going to see about the diabetes prevention program. So I pulled this up, and we see here that when we have the intervention, people in the lifestyle program lost the most. But then as we go out a little bit further, they start coming together as far as the weight loss outcomes. If you go out even further, we see that everybody's pretty much the same at 10 years. Now, you still have a reduced reduction in diabetes onset, but the weight is likely not the factor. It's probably the lifestyle change, which would be increased physical activity. There's some stress reduction of some cognitive behavioral therapy that's wrapped in as far as concepts, this idea of mindset and setting goals. So it's likely it might be more of that. So this weight cycling is really associated with the risk of developing diabetes. And if you look at people that are intentionally trying to lose weight, the risk of diabetes actually goes up. So I was just finding a lot of issues with this approach of focusing on weight loss, and had been introduced to Health at Every Size years and years ago. Kind of was just, pushing it aside because the diabetes prevention program is focused on like a 5 to 10% weight loss. So in my mind, I was kind of justifying it as it's called a lifestyle change program. I really loved a lot of the lifestyle components of the curriculum, a lot of us did. But this focus on weight, even the 5 to 10%, it really gets people stuck in the diet culture. I also found I kind of had to do some deprogramming of people. So we had to spend the first 10 weeks of, okay, this is not about diet, but we're weighing you. It just was, it was really hard, really hard. A lot of you are shaking your heads. So I just kind of reached a point last year, I can't do anything that has to do with weight loss anymore as the main focus. We're going to focus on wellness. So fortunately, my diabetes prevention lifestyle coaches, they actually were relieved. They're, oh, thank goodness, because we were having a real issue with this. And then just some tie-ins as far as focusing on weight loss as an outcome. We really don't want to perpetuate weight stigma, and we felt like we were doing that with this program. And you can see there's just a lot of information out there as far as sizeism. About 40% of the population in the US admits that they've been subjected to some kind of weight stigma, weight discrimination. And actually, we see that the risk for mental health problems, substance use, suicidality, and actually increased risk of mortality over the long term is tied in with this weight bias and bullying. Weight-based bullying is more common than bullying based on race, sexual orientation, or disability status. So when I first started in childhood obesity prevention work, all the literature was saying, oh, we need to help kids lose weight because they're getting bullied at school. They don't feel good. They have poor mental health outcomes. And it's actually the reverse. We really need to realize that diversity, equity, inclusion also includes weight in different sizes. And we also know people who face that weight stigma, they're more likely to engage in disordered eating, unhealthy eating behaviors, binge eating. They avoid healthcare and physical activity. So two things that we really would like people to do more of. You know, they're hiding away and they don't want to go. And then also just increased risk for psychological problems, including depression, anxiety, substance use. Just a little bit there. This is a really good article. So it has a nice summary of all of these components that I just covered. I think a missed opportunity is at the end, they still are talking about how do we help with obesity. So it's kind of the reverse of, okay, if we address all these mental and psychological issues, then we'll be able to solve the obesity problem. Okay, so in looking at, well, what could we do differently? We are pursuing increasing capacity for intuitive eating certification. There's a lot of things out there that say they're intuitive eating. I personally was like, I don't want to do intuitive eating because I thought it was just eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full. Well, I've never been able to do that on a regular basis. So that didn't make sense to me. So fortunately, I have some colleagues that did some work in this area. A fellow graduate student did her dissertation on intuitive eating. I'm like, okay, I'll look at it a little bit more. So it's really, if you're going to do intuitive eating and call it intuitive eating, we really need to pay respect to the people who actually developed it and follow their principles. And it's much more than just eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full. So right now, I'm trying to think, we have 6 of us have become official certified intuitive eating coaches. It's a little bit lengthy, but it's well worth it. And we have about 5 to 6 more that are in the process. So just trying to increase awareness and opportunities and get the word out that this idea that we're always focusing on weight really is causing more problems than it's helping. Even if you would like people to maybe be a smaller size, you know, dieting is the indicator of obesity. So weight restriction, restrictive eating, all of these things. So we need to fill that gap, and it's exciting to hear so many people interested in the health psychology approach. Oh, I got 2 minutes. Okay, let's go. Okay, a little bit about our trial. So we're going to do a little bit of a trial in the spring. It's going to be 12 weeks. So the original lifestyle program for diabetes prevention is 1 year. I anticipate we'll develop something for that. I just wanted to do something kind of quick and easy. There's a workbook already for intuitive eating. So we'll do 12 weeks. We're going to recruit from our past diabetes prevention program participants, feeling like we would like to try to correct some of the damage we may have created, and focus on these 12 principles. We'll have like an intro session, the 12 principles, and then a follow-up session. And my colleague here, Zena, is going to do some qualitative interviews after and see what people think of the 2 programs. We're going to actually use the diabetes prevention outcome measures. We'll do blind weights. We're trying to find a way of how can we adapt this and still meet the CDC requirements for recognition without the focus on weight, and eventually develop a curriculum that CDC may or may not approve. They will take an alternative curriculum for recognition if there's an evidence base behind it, which there clearly is. So that's exciting. We also want to find out, well, what more do people need? Just going through the training, it's a lot of information to cover. And if if you need to change your mindset and your paradigm thinking, and, you know, one of the things people are always relieved to hear is like, you know, emotional eating for emotions is fine, but not if you could rely on it all the time. So I imagine we're going to have people say, well, we need more help with that, the physical activity aspect. So I'm excited to see what we find out. We're also already incorporating some concepts from dialectical behavioral therapy as far as the structure and the format. We're going to do Thursday sessions introducing the principle. You get to practice it, come back on Tuesday. We're going to check in. If people don't do the practice, it's not a judgment, but we're going to do a missing chain analysis of what got in the way. So there are a lot, I'm excited because there are a lot of tools we can borrow from mental and behavioral health that are going to be helpful. And those are the real strong points of the original diabetes prevention program. About half of the sessions were cognitive, you know, change your thinking, change your attitude. How do we do that? And give people the opportunity to actually practice that. And, you know, we want to make sure that we're recognizing the overlap between weight and health equity, weight and health or economic disparities, racial disparities, and feel like this really fits in with the framework for extension and health. And looking at some possibilities too of, okay, let's look at our practices and policies in our programs and making sure that they're weight inclusive, health at every size, and make sure that we're using language that is going to be helpful for people's overall health and wellness. That's what I have. Thanks.
Time for a couple questions? All right. I'll come around that side.
Hi, Laura Sant, University of Idaho Extension. Would you ever consider including other states in your research on this?
Oh, of course, yeah. Definitely. I really want to get through this little pilot trial first, but yeah, I think a lot of people are interested in this. We do have an extension national group that's for the National Diabetes Prevention Program, and I just kind of mentioned a follow-up email from one of our meetings. I'm like, oh, you know, I'm doing this little thing. They're like, we would like to know more about that. So I think a lot of us have had this not great feeling about this 5 to, you know, and the weight focus, and it's very, it's kind of like invalidating as far as, oh, it's lifestyle and we're not focused on weight, but we are. So yeah, I'd love to talk to people more about it. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Good for you. I had to learn the hard way. I think the other thing too is, you know, the good thing about the diabetes prevention program is it's getting more visible. I think it's a great opportunity to get people in, especially we know that eating disorders and disordered eating, the incidence is increasing among older women in particular. So we have this diet culture effect that's actually, the trajectory is you know, kind of extended out. So I think we have a real opportunity to do some prevention work too. So.
Yeah, thank you, Zena, for your presentation. I'm Cassandra Nguyen from UC Davis. And kudos for the way that you present it and how authentic you are about what brought you to where you are. I'd love to hear, because I can imagine many of us can think of our own programs or practices and maybe things that we're interested in changing. Could you speak to any kind of like pushback you had about kind of exploring this area and or kind of challenges in going through the process to collect additional empirical evidence to potentially change practice? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we haven't collected that yet. So I'll let you know how that goes. I think one of the challenges is going to be actually identifying what are going to be the best measures. So just, you know, hearing what I've heard so far, that's going to be helpful. We don't want to overburden participants as far as like how many things to ask them. So kind of identifying what are the key ones. I think I haven't gotten any pushback yet. I think maybe people are a little bit dismissive because of that preconception about what intuitive eating is. I'll also say we've also had some situations where we as a group decided these are our principles. These are our working principles. We're not going to focus on weight. We're not going to celebrate, like diet behaviors and all of that. And we all worked together as a group to do that. And then I still had somebody in that group making some pretty obvious statements about somebody's success in this program based on. So, and I think it's just, you have your own personal journey too and your own personal work to do. And that's probably going to be the hardest part of, thinking maybe you're doing intuitive eating, health at every size. So it's really important, I think, to have people to check in with and be able to speak up and just say, hey, that's the other thing I've borrowed from DBT, and Lizanne is reminding me, like, they make sure their work is really hard. They make sure they have a coaching team, and you check in and go, okay, we're having this issue, or this is what's happening, and people are willing to give you honest feedback and support. So I think that's going to be really key too. Great questions.
Okay, if Danielle could make your way up, and we're going to switch out. And while that's happening, we have one more question. There's still a lot of people have questions, so we're going to have to defer them. But we'll do one while Danielle is setting up her slides.
I'll make a little more of a statement than a question, and then we can chat after the fact. But the concept of intuitive eating as an approach really made me think about food security and the other issues that we've been talking about for the last 2 days. And it would seem that food security would be imperative for that approach to be successful. So it would be interesting to explore what that would look like.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Evelyn Tribole is very clear that if you don't have food security, you're not going to be able to do the intuitive eating approach. So that is one downside. I think we still could use a health at every size paradigm, not focusing on that. So there's some nuances to be worked out. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, you got to have the food security first.